My name is Diana Mercer. I was 36 years old when I finally understood that in my family, being useful had never once meant being loved. The lesson did not arrive slowly or gently the way some hard truths do. It arrived on a Tuesday night, the evening before my father's 65th birthday, while I was standing at my kitchen counter with my phone in one hand and a half-finished grocery list in the other, still trying to remember whether he preferred lemon cake or chocolate. I had spent the entire afternoon confirming details for his birthday lunch. Flowers, catering, the private room at the venue, the custom cake I had ordered based on something he mentioned liking years ago when I was still small enough to believe that remembering those things made me matter. I had done all of it quietly the way I always did, making sure everything would look effortless by the time everyone walked through the door. That was always my role. If something needed to be paid for, arranged, fixed, or rescued, it found its way to me. And for years, I let that fool me into thinking I belonged. Then my phone buzzed. The family group chat lit up with a message from my sister Nicole. "Stay home. Don't come tomorrow. We're sick of your attitude." I stared at the screen for a long moment, honestly expecting more. Some follow-up. Some explanation. Some I did not mean that the way it sounded. Instead, my mother reacted with a thumbs up. A few seconds later, my father did the same. Just like that, 3 people who shared my blood made me feel like an unwanted stranger in under 60 seconds. I typed back one single line. "So that is what I am to this family." Nobody answered me. They kept right on chatting over it, laughing about table seating and the weather forecast and a summer trip they were apparently already planning, as if I had not just been quietly pushed out of the room while they watched. That was the moment something inside me went completely still. Not broken. Not crying. Just still, the way things go quiet right before something changes permanently. I set the grocery list down, opened my banking app, and began undoing every kind thing they had spent years mistaking for their entitlement. 10 minutes later, the same people who could not be bothered to defend me were flooding the chat in full panic. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. But before I tell you what I canceled, what disappeared overnight, and why my family was begging before the night was over, you need to understand how we got here. You need to understand the kind of childhood that teaches a girl to make herself invisible and call it virtue. I grew up in a house where love was never spoken plainly. It was implied, withheld, rationed out in ways that took me decades to fully map. My sister Nicole was the kind of daughter people noticed immediately. She was bright and charming in that effortless way my parents openly admired, always at the center of every story, always the one the room seemed to arrange itself around. If Nicole won something, the whole house buzzed for days. If she made a mistake, everyone rushed to soften it, to excuse it, to frame it as something understandable given everything she had been through. I was the other kind of child, the one who did not cause scenes. The one who learned early that being easy to overlook was not the same thing as being easy to love. Even typing that now I feel the weight of how long it took me to see it clearly. By the time we were teenagers, the difference between us needed no explanation. Nicole got the newer clothes, the excited attention, the kind of parental pride that showed up in public. I got the practical things, the leftover things, and a steady rotation of gentle reminders that I was mature enough to understand why I should not expect more. When Nicole turned 16, my parents found a way to help her get a car. They said she needed freedom. She needed opportunities. At that same age, I was riding a secondhand bicycle to my part-time job and being told that working young would build character. That phrase appeared constantly in my childhood. Character, responsibility, maturity. They pulled those words out whenever I was expected to accept less and smile while doing it. If any part of what I just described feels familiar, if you grew up being the responsible one, the capable one, the one who adjusted without complaint while someone else got the softer treatment, drop a 1 in the comments right now. You are not alone in this. And stay with me, because this story gets both darker and freer before it ends. When money got tight in the house, I was the one who adjusted without being asked. When my father went through a difficult stretch at work and stress hung over everything like bad weather, I did not become someone to comfort. I became someone to depend on. I took extra shifts. I changed my plans. I skipped things I wanted and stepped into whatever gap needed filling without anyone ever sitting me down and asking me to. That was the thing about my family. Nobody ever made a formal demand. That would have been easier to resist. Instead, they let silence do the work. They let me notice the problem, step forward, and then treated my help like the natural order of things, like water running downhill, like it could not have happened any other way. When my grandmother started needing care, I was the one who stayed. I sat with her through long afternoons. I cooked for her, helped her dress, drove her to every appointment, picked up her prescriptions, and listened to stories nobody else had patience for. I told myself I was doing the right thing, and I was. The problem was that in my family, doing the right thing quickly became doing the expected thing. And expected things do not earn you gratitude. They earn you a permanent assignment. For years I mistook that role for closeness. I thought being the dependable one meant I mattered in some deeper, truer way than the rest. It took me a very long time to understand that I had not been cherished. I had been assigned. I spent my entire childhood and most of my adult life paying for a place in a family that had already decided exactly how much I was worth. And the night before my father's birthday, standing in my kitchen with that group chat glowing on my phone, I finally stopped paying. When I married James at 28, I honestly believed that building my own life would finally shift the balance. I thought once I had my own home, my own routines, my own husband who saw me clearly, my parents might finally start seeing me differently too. I thought they would understand that I was no longer the extra set of hands quietly holding everything together in the background of their lives. But families like mine do not always adjust when one person grows. They just widen their list of what they feel entitled to take. James saw the truth before I did. He never said it harshly or tried to drive a wedge between us. But he noticed the pattern almost from the beginning. He noticed that my mother rarely called simply to ask how I was doing. There was always something attached. A concern, a favor, a problem that drifted toward me before the call ever ended. He noticed that my father spoke to me warmly when everything was smooth, but the moment something became inconvenient, I became the one expected to be practical and step up. He noticed that my sister Nicole had a way of arriving in crisis after crisis with the quiet confidence of someone who had never truly faced the consequences of her own decisions. I defended all of them for years. I said families lean on each other. I said my parents were from a different generation. I said Nicole had been through a lot. The truth was simpler and much harder to say out loud. I had spent so long trying to earn warmth from them that I kept confusing access for love. When my daughter Lily was born, I had one of those days that people tell you will live inside you forever. And it does, though not entirely for the reasons it should. I remember the hospital lights, the exhaustion in my body, James standing beside me with tears he was not even trying to hide, and the small, perfect weight of my daughter in my arms. I also remember my mother arriving with a smile that felt slightly rushed, holding Lily for a few minutes, and then stepping out into the hallway because my sister was calling about something she insisted could not wait. I remember hearing my mother's voice change the moment she answered, becoming more alert, more focused, more genuinely present for that phone call than she had been for the birth of her granddaughter. I lay there staring at the ceiling afterward, telling myself not to make it into something. Telling myself at least she came. That was how I survived my family for years. I lowered the bar and then quietly praised them for clearing it. By the time my son Owen was born, disappointment had already trained me. My mother sent a message. My father called later than expected. Nicole managed to make everything somehow about how overwhelming her own week had been. And even then, even after watching how little space my children occupied in their hearts compared to the endless emotional weather of my sister's life, I kept giving. Drop a 2 in the comments if you have ever lowered your own standards just to keep the peace in your family. Because what I am about to tell you about the money, the actual numbers, is the part that still takes my breath away when I think about it. I kept paying my mother's credit card when she fell behind because she always framed it as temporary. I kept stepping in when my father had a financial gap he swore would be resolved by next month. I kept helping Nicole when late fees and rent and car payments and one more badly managed decision caught up with her again. Every single arrangement came wrapped in the same language. Just this month. Just until things settle. Just until payday. But things never settled. Temporary became recurring. Recurring became normal. Normal became invisible. I also contributed to family plans that managed to exclude me in their actual execution. Group dinners, weekend trips, holiday gatherings, gift funds. The kind of shared expenses that made everyone feel generous as long as someone like me quietly covered the portion nobody wanted to discuss. There were times I helped pay for something and still found out the details after everyone else. Still arrived to find the seating had been arranged without much thought given to where I might be comfortable. Still watched my children be treated like a polite inconvenience that people had agreed to tolerate. Last year alone, when I finally made myself sit down and add everything up, I had spent just over $21,000 on things connected to my parents and my sister. Not one single shocking payment that would have woken me up. Dozens of smaller ones. Transfers, autopays, emergency rescues, covered balances, deposits, and all the quiet little interventions that were never really little when you saw them laid out together. James had tried more than once to get me to stop and really look at what was happening. He told me that support should not feel permanently one-sided. He told me love was not supposed to arrive disguised as obligation. He told me our children were old enough to notice when their mother went tense every time certain names appeared on her phone. But every time I came close to drawing a real line, guilt rushed in before courage could settle. I thought if I just kept being patient, kept being generous, kept being dependable, maybe eventually my parents would stop seeing me as the daughter who handled everything and start seeing me as someone worth protecting too. What I did not understand yet was that the role I played in that family only functioned as long as I kept paying for it. The moment I stopped being useful, I was going to find out exactly how they really felt. And on the night before my father's birthday, standing in my kitchen with that group chat message glowing on my screen, that moment arrived. After I sent that one quiet message back to the group chat, I did not wait for anyone to explain themselves, because I already knew there was nothing to explain. Instead, I opened my laptop, and I started canceling everything. After I sent that message to the group chat, I did not wait for anyone to respond. I already knew there was nothing coming that I needed to hear. People do not accidentally tell you to stay home from your own father's birthday. They do not accidentally include your husband and your children in that rejection. And they definitely do not accidentally agree with it using a thumbs up and then keep right on talking as if nothing happened. For a few seconds I stood there in my kitchen feeling the particular kind of quiet that comes when something inside you stops fighting what it already knows. James looked at my face and understood immediately. He asked to see my phone, read the messages, set it back on the counter without saying much. He did not tell me to calm down. He did not tell me to be the bigger person. He just looked at me and said, "If they do not want us there, they do not get to use you to make tomorrow look perfect." That was the first moment all night I felt something close to clarity. I sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and went through every account I had spent years pretending not to examine too closely. The country club where my father's birthday lunch was booked was still sitting in my inbox from earlier that afternoon alongside a final payment reminder. I had reserved the private room 3 weeks earlier because my mother said she wanted something tasteful, something that would feel special without being too showy. In my family, that usually meant expensive enough to impress the right people while everyone pretended nobody cared about appearances. I had put down the deposit myself, selected the lunch menu, upgraded the dessert package, paid extra for the floral arrangements because Nicole said the standard centerpieces looked cheap. Haha. I actually paid extra for the flowers because she said they looked cheap. I sat there looking at that line item and felt something between disbelief and a strange exhausted amusement. I clicked cancel. The next thing I did was remove my card from the catering balance. That one had been especially humiliating in hindsight because nobody had actually asked me to cover it outright. My mother had called 2 days earlier sounding stressed, talking in vague circles about rising prices and how everything had gotten so expensive, then gone just quiet enough for me to do what I always did. Step in. I had transferred the money that same afternoon without being asked. Now I reversed it. After that I canceled the custom cake order from the bakery, the one I had chosen based on a flavor my father used to mention loving when I was a child, back when I still believed that remembering small things like that was a form of love that would eventually be returned. Comment a 3 if you are still here with me. Because the moment those cancellation emails started landing in their inboxes, everything changed. And the group chat that had been laughing about table seating 10 minutes earlier went completely silent. Stay right here. I canceled the DJ my sister had insisted they absolutely needed, even though this was a lunchtime birthday party and not a reception. Then I opened my mother's credit card autopay portal and removed my checking account from the payment that had been running quietly on her behalf for months. Not because she could not manage it at all, but because every time the balance climbed too high, somehow I was the solution she never had to thank or even formally ask. Then I went to the account tied to Nicole's monthly car payment and deleted my banking details from that too. That arrangement had begun during one of her difficult stretches when she promised she needed help for 2 months at most. That had been almost a year ago. I also stopped the automatic transfer going into the family travel fund, that little account my mother liked to call the vacation pot, as if we were all contributing equally to something we would all equally enjoy, when the reality was that plans were usually made around everyone else first and mentioned to me somewhere near the end. My phone kept lighting up with new messages while I worked, but none of them were about me. They were still talking. Nicole discussing what she planned to wear. My mother concerned about the forecast. My father making some joke about senior discounts. I watched those messages appear one after another, and felt something colder and quieter than anger move through me. It was not just that they had insulted me. It was that they genuinely believed I would absorb it and still show up the next morning. Still pay. Still help. Still keep the whole illusion intact. They were not dealing with a misunderstanding. They were relying on a pattern they had spent years building. At 9:08 in the evening, the first confirmation email came through from the country club. The card on file had been removed. The room would not be held without a valid payment method. 2 minutes later, the bakery sent its cancellation notice. Then the caterer. Then the DJ. I did not send screenshots. I did not make an announcement. I did not need to. By 9:11, the group chat transformed completely. Nicole was the first to break. What did you do? Fix it right now. My mother came next. Suddenly soft in the particular way she only became when panic had replaced superiority. Sweetheart, please do not do this. This is not funny. My father followed a few minutes later, confused at first, then sharp the moment he understood this was not a bluff designed to make a point. What happened to the reservation? Why am I getting these emails? I read every single message without answering once. For years they had treated my help like background noise, something that simply existed around them without needing to be acknowledged. Now that it was gone, they were finally hearing the silence it had always been filling. And for the first time in my life, I let them sit in it. I did not sleep much that night. I lay awake beside James while my phone lit up again and again on the nightstand, each vibration sounding less like urgency and more like consequence. And when I finally did close my eyes, the memories came one after another, so clear they felt like they had been waiting years for exactly this moment. I did not sleep much that night. I lay beside James staring at the ceiling while my phone kept going on the nightstand. At first I kept expecting guilt to arrive the way it always had before, that familiar panic telling me I had gone too far and needed to fix everything before morning. But guilt never really came. What came instead were memories. I remembered Nicole's 16th birthday party, the one my parents planned for weeks like it was a presidential event. Rented tables in the backyard, catered food, an enormous cake, a guest list full of people they wanted to impress. When I turned 16, we had takeout in the kitchen, and my mother told me intimate celebrations were more meaningful. I remembered the year my father said money was tight and asked if I could help with repairs because they were worried about the roof and the plumbing. I gave them the money without a single question. A few months later, that same house appeared in anniversary photos from a party James and I had never been invited to. I remembered every holiday where I helped pay for the dinner, and still somehow ended up sitting at the edge of the table. Every family plan I contributed to but heard about last. Every moment I convinced myself that being included poorly was better than not being included at all. Somewhere after midnight, my mother started calling instead of texting. I watched her name flash across the screen over and over and did not answer once. Then Nicole called. Then my father. By 2 in the morning, the group chat had moved from outrage through confusion and arrived at full damage control. Nicole was no longer furious. She was frantic. She kept saying I was humiliating Dad, as if I had done something cruel in public instead of quietly stepping back from something I had been privately funding all along. My mother tried the softer approach. She said none of this was supposed to happen like this. She said I was taking things too personally. She said Nicole had just been stressed and emotional and that nobody had meant it the way it sounded. That part almost made me laugh out loud. Because there is genuinely no gentle reading of stay home. Do not come tomorrow. We are sick of your attitude. They meant it exactly the way it sounded. What they had not meant was to lose access to me at the same time. By morning, the situation had become impossible to contain. The country club had reached out again asking whether a replacement payment would be submitted by 10 or the private room would be permanently released. The bakery had confirmed the custom order was cancelled. The caterer had moved on. The DJ had kept the deposit per their policy. My father, who had probably assumed all the details had simply come together through family love and effort, was now learning piece by piece that almost everything had been held in place by me. Drop a 4 in the comments if you are still here. Because what happened when I finally responded what I posted in that group chat and what my family said back, that is the part that changed everything for good. Do not go anywhere. Around 9:30 I got out of bed, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen island while James made breakfast for Lily and Owen. He did not push me to talk. He just moved around me with that steady calm I had leaned on so many times. When he set a mug in front of me he said, "You do not owe people comfort after they disrespected you." That sentence settled somewhere deep, because that was exactly what I had been giving my family for 13 years. Comfort. Financial comfort. Emotional comfort. The comfort of knowing that someone else would always absorb the mess. Around 10:15 my father finally texted me directly. "I need to understand what is happening. The venue says the reservation is gone. Your mother is upset. Your sister says you are overreacting." I stared at that message for a long time. Not because I did not know what to say, but because I suddenly understood something that made my chest ache in a new way. He still was not asking what had happened to me. He was asking what had happened to the party. Even now, after the panic, after the fallout, after knowing something serious had taken place overnight. His first concern was the event, not the daughter who had just been told she was not welcome at it. I set the phone down without answering. By early afternoon I was done having private conversations about a public humiliation. If my family could insult me in the group chat, then the truth could live there too. I went upstairs and pulled down an old storage box. James helped me carry years of bank statements, payment confirmations, and receipts to the dining room table. Together we sorted everything into piles, while I added up what I had covered over the previous 5 years. Credit card payments for my mother. Rent assistance and car payments for Nicole. Club dues and home repairs for my parents. Holiday dinners. Trip contributions. Deposits. Emergencies. All the small rescues that were never actually small. When I finished, the total came to just over $49,000. I sat looking at that number for a long moment. Then I took a photograph of the entire table covered in documentation and posted it in the family group chat. Underneath the photo I wrote, "This is what I have spent covering this family over the last 5 years. You never had to ask. You simply assumed I would pay." My mother answered first. "Family helps family." Nicole called me manipulative and said I was trying to make everyone look bad. My father told me to call him privately. I refused. It happened in the group chat when I was told not to come tomorrow so it can stay in the group chat. Then Nicole snapped back and said none of this would be happening if I had simply let one rude message go. That was when I dropped a screenshot of her original message, and both my parents' thumbs-up reactions directly beneath the receipts. Then I wrote underneath it, "One message does not erase a family. It exposes one." My mother tried guilt. Nicole tried anger. My father asked if I was really ending things over this. I told him no. I was ending things over 13 years of being used, and last night had simply made it impossible to keep pretending otherwise. Then I sent one final message. "I am done paying to be disrespected. Do not contact me again unless it is to genuinely apologize to my husband and my children." After that I blocked my sister. Then my mother. Then my father. The silence that followed felt strange for approximately 2 seconds. Then it felt like peace. They did not stop trying. For the next 3 days, messages came through email addresses I had forgotten they had. Through relatives suddenly eager to play peacemaker. Through every gap they could find. And there was one message in particular that arrived from Nicole that almost would have worked on the version of me that existed a week earlier. The messages did not stop right away. For 3 days they arrived in waves through email, through unknown numbers, through relatives who suddenly felt a calling to intervene on behalf of people they had watched treat me poorly for years without saying a word. First came anger. Then came guilt. Then came the part that almost would have worked on the old version of me, the promises. They said we could talk. They said things had gotten out of hand. They said nobody had meant for it to go this far. Nicole even sent a message through an old email address she apparently still had for me, saying she was sorry if her words had come out wrong. If that single tiny word told me everything I needed to know. She was not sorry for what she had done. She was sorry it had cost her something. And for the first time in my life, I understood clearly that an apology without accountability is just another way to ask for access. It is not repair. It is just a different kind of reach. So I did something my family had never managed to train out of me, even though they had tried for years. I left it alone. I did not explain myself. I did not rush in to make everyone more comfortable. I did not go back and prove I was the reasonable one by smoothing everything over before anyone had truly reckoned with what they had done. Instead, I stayed home. I stayed with the people who had never once asked me to earn my place with them. James made pancakes on Saturday morning while Lily and Owen turned the living room into an elaborate blanket fort and argued loudly about the structural integrity of the sofa cushion wall. I crawled inside that fort and lay on my back with both of them, and we ate too much whipped cream and laughed about nothing important, and I did not feel guilty about any of it for even 1 second. That afternoon we went to choose an early Christmas tree because the kids had been asking, and because for once I felt absolutely no pressure to justify doing something purely because it brought us joy. Somewhere between watching Lily reach for the tallest branch she could find and listening to Owen make an impassioned argument for the most lopsided tree on the entire lot, something settled inside me that I had not felt settle in a very long time. Tell me in the comments. And if you have dealt with something similar, share your story. You are not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Not because what my family had done stopped hurting. It still hurt. It probably always will in the particular quiet way that certain kinds of loss do. But because I finally understood the difference between being needed and being loved. And those two things I now know with absolute certainty are not the same. For years I had confused sacrifice with loyalty. I had confused guilt with responsibility. I had told myself that being a good daughter meant always saying yes, always stepping in, always paying, always being the one who understood. But all that ever taught the wrong people was that they could wound me and still count on me to finance the next celebration. The truth I wish I had learned years earlier is this. Love without respect is not love. It is just a comfortable arrangement for the person receiving it. Family without real boundaries is not safety. It is just a system that works for everyone except the person holding it up. And helping people who feel entitled to your help will never earn you the place in their hearts that they decided not to give you a long time ago. Real family is not the loudest claim on your time or your money or your patience. Real family is the place where your presence matters more than your usefulness. Where your children are genuinely welcomed, not politely tolerated. Where kindness moves in both directions without anyone keeping a careful score. I spent 13 years trying to purchase closeness from people who only noticed me when something needed covering. I will not spend the next 13 years teaching my children that this is what love is supposed to look like. If there was any gift hidden inside what happened the night before my father's birthday, it was this. They finally said the quiet part out loud. They finally let me see, without any softening or ambiguity, exactly where I stood. And once they did that, I was free. Weeping used to be what I did privately, in the car after family dinners, in the bathroom before I came back to the table with a smile. Not anymore. These days when I cry, it is the kind of crying that comes from being so full of something good that your body does not quite know how else to hold it. It comes when Lily falls asleep against my shoulder. When Owen brings me a drawing he made for no reason. When James looks at me across our kitchen table with the uncomplicated certainty of someone who has always known exactly who I am. That is what I protected when I canceled those reservations and removed those payments and posted those receipts and blocked those numbers. Not a grudge. Not a point to prove. Not revenge dressed up as justice. I protected this. These people. This life. This quiet table where everyone sitting at it actually chose to be there. So if you are out there right now carrying what I used to carry, if you are the one everyone counts on but nobody truly sees, if you are the one who adjusts and absorbs and steps in and pays and smiles and tells yourself it is fine, I need you to hear something I wish someone had said to me much earlier. You do not have to keep making yourself smaller to stay connected to people who only value what you provide. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to say enough. You are allowed to stop paying the price of belonging in the wrong place. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for the family you are building with people who actually deserve you, is to stop. Just stop. And let the silence finally tell the truth that you were too kind to say out loud.